All right, we are now joined by Justin Allgaier, driver of the number 7 Junior Motorsports Chevrolet. Before we open it up to questions, though, I'm going to toss it over to Justin because he has an announcement for us.
Yeah, excited to announce that I'll be back with Junior Motorsports for 2 more years. In the number 7 with Brent Professional Agriculture as a sponsor, and still got a little work left to do in 2024, but looking forward to get started in 2025 and keeping the 17 rolling.
Awesome. All right, we will now open it up for questions. So if you have a question for Justin, please raise your hand and we will get a mic over to you. Let's go to Holly and then Bob.
Thank you. Hi, Justin. Holly Hayne with the NASCAR Fire Service. I guess just kind of the obvious question, catch us up a little bit on how you think the playoffs are going for you and certainly what your expectations are this weekend.
Up until the Roval, which we kind of talked about a little bit last week, but up until the Roval, I thought it was atrocious. And the last 2 weeks have obviously been more in stride with where we feel like we need to be at. You know, last week I told Jim I feel like I know that we're getting back on form because I was upset that we finished third and didn't have a shot at winning the race, or didn't pull off the race win at the end of the race there. But you know, I feel like we're coming into a stretch now where you come here to Homestead, which statistically, I know you guys are all stats people. This hasn't been my greatest racetrack for sure, but we've had speed here. And you know, last year we kind of threw a Hail Mary, and we came with something a lot different than what we would typically run at Junior Motorsports. And I thought it was really good. We unfortunately had a loose wheel and didn't have the finish to show for it, but ironically, we took the lead when the wheel was loose and felt like we had a car that was capable of winning the race. So, you know, we'll kind of regroup this year, but then, you know, last year was obviously super fun at Martinsville and being able to go there and win and lock our way into the round of 4. But you know, we've done such a better job this year of gaining points and putting ourselves in a better position. And I think that I'd like to walk into Martinsville with a few more points on the board than what we had last time. But you know, the top 3, if you exclude AJ, the top 3 I think are close enough in points that, you know, if there are 2 new winners, it could make that last spot really, really difficult to kind of manage. So we'll see what happens, but so far so good.
Let's go to Bob.
Bob, Chris Fine Sports. Was there any reason or any part of you that wasn't planning on coming back?
No, not really. You know, this has been for me a great relationship. You know, Rick Brandt and I have had lots of conversations about what that looks like for them as a company, and you know, Junior Motorsports is a really, really good fit for them, with Dale and Kelly and being a family-owned team, with their company, with you know, Rick taking the reins, and now obviously Sierra Shea being a part of that and taking more on at Brandt. You know, I feel like that this is. It's been fun to watch. It's been fun to watch them grow. I mean, when we did this 14 years ago, I never would have thought we'd still be sitting here doing this in this capacity. And you know, I've been lucky enough to see them grow not only, you know, regionally or nationally, but all over the world. And I've traveled to some amazing countries with them. And when I had these conversations with Rick about, you know, is this something that you guys want to continue with? Is this something that makes sense for you? You know, it's a resounding yes, and it's cool to have somebody like the Brandt family that comes to the races. They're here, they're at the track, they're very visible, and they truly have the same passion for the sport that I do, and that makes a big difference. So, yeah, it's good to be back.
Did they ask you, do you want to continue doing this? And
they did.
Your response?
Yeah, they did. Actually, Joe Mattis, those of you that know Joe Mattis from Junior Motorsports, I was actually in Campbell's office one day, and he come in and he shut the door and he said, "All right, give me the lowdown. What do you want to do? Where are we at here?" And you know, I think that there were some questions of, you know, how much longer I wanted to do this, what I want to do. You know, I don't know what that looks like. I mean, realistically, in 2 years I'll be 40, right? And I've kind of always said that 40 was my number. I need to make a decision on what I'm going to do. But to be honest with you, in my wildest dreams, I never really expected to get to 40 in this sport and still have an opportunity to come do it. So, you know, I have that opportunity now, and I'm enjoying what I do, and I still feel competitive, and you know, obviously running the 600 this year and being competitive on the Cup side was a lot of fun. You know, so those are all things that I think for me have added to kind of my excitement to keep doing it. The problem is, and to your point, I don't know that they're going to ask me when it's time for me to go. I think it's going to be, hey, hey, see you later, bye-bye. And I think we all hit that spot, right? But I also feel like I'll know when that time is and what that looks like. I'm way closer to that time than I have ever been, right? Daughters are both growing up and, missing sporting events and all that fun stuff. I think, for me, when my kids were younger, or even before I had kids, this sport was really easy, because you travel all the time. My wife got to travel with me, and you see the world kind of. And as my kids have gotten older, you realize this sport, and I give a lot of credit to the men and women that work in the sport week in and week out. No different than y'all that do this week in and week out. It's a sacrifice in some ways. It's very rewarding, and there's a lot of things that make the sport what it is. But it's been fun to be a part of it and to be where I'm at today and have the success that I've had, and I wouldn't trade it, but it's definitely a lot different picture than it was 10, 15 years ago.
Let's go to Lee.
Hey, Spencer Sears, XM NASCAR Radio and catchfence.com. You and AJ will definitely bring up the championship for average age. Do you ever see the Xfinity Series trend back to a place where, just veteran drivers can enjoy enjoy racing and, make a decent livelihood?
I don't know. It's a very unique time, right? I think you have guys like myself, like AJ, that have been around the sport for a long time, that are here and competitive and running in front. You've got a lot of young drivers that are coming in that are doing an incredible job. It's unbelievable to watch some of these young drivers come in and already have the composure and the experience and the ability to just jump in and go do it. I think that the advancements of technology have definitely changed the game in that regard, whether it be simulator or onboard videos, things like that. I remember having to request onboard videos, and you might get one or two a year, but you weren't getting all of them, right? There was no shot you were going to get them all, and I think they were in 480p, and you couldn't even hardly see out the front windshield, right? Technology has come a long way, and with SMT, just people are able to come into sport in a lot different way. When I look at my first start, there was 62 cars on the entry list, I think, at the time, and 28 of those guys were full-time Cup guys that were going to race the next day, at Charlotte. So it's a very different sport than it was, and I was laughing just a little bit ago, actually, about the Truck Series, and when I first came into the Truck Series and ran against guys like Ted Musgrave and Jack Sprague and Mike Skinner and Tom Benine, and the list goes on, and you think back to those days, and I was laughing because they'd make your life miserable if you did something wrong, right? So I think there's always good to have guys that have been around the sport and kind of have checks and balances a little bit, but I don't know what this series looks like. I did have a Cup driver tell me that with the way the Xfinity car drives and how kind of on edge it is, that if Cup guys could make the same money running Xfinity cars, they probably would do it because they would enjoy the cars so much. But I think that they both have their own place, right? The Cup Series car, just running Charlotte and doing what I do with Chevrolet and the Wheel Force car, the Cup Series car is a blast to drive. Now, granted, when I'm testing, it's significantly different. I'm on the only car on the racetrack, right? You don't have to worry about the other idiots where they're going. But Charlotte was fun for me because I was able to really start to get comfortable and see where it was at. And it is a totally different style of racing. It's very, very high-paced, very kind of just go where you need, where the openings are at, right? Nobody really has they're not thinking about what the long term looks like, right? It's kind of short term. Whereas the thing with the Xfinity car, especially here at a place like Homestead, where it is slick and slow, and managing your tires and you're never really at full grip. I think that it makes it a lot of fun for a driver like myself that's kind of grown up in the sport. So it's just different. I don't know that you'll see a full series of old guys like myself, but at the same time, I do think that there are some people that have come here and experienced Xfinity car lately, and they really love where the car's at, and they're able to enjoy it. Now AJ's leaving, he's going back to Cup. Cole's leaving, he's going back to Cup. So next year's going to be really interesting, but it'll be fun.
go back up to Dustin.
Dustin Allgaier, Sports. In light of what you're saying, where does experience, or how does experience still matter? And obviously, these young kids are still going to learn things they don't know. But when somebody sees Connor Zillage go out and win his first race, we saw what a few years back when Ty Gibbs did it as well, that it would seem like that there's a gap that's closing, or where does experience matter? Something that you have an abundance of over some of your other competitors.
I think it matters when you drive from the airport to the racetrack. You know where I'm going. I don't get lost whenever I get to the tracks anymore. To that point, I mean, I don't know that it has the same place that it used to have. You know, maybe there's certain trends or different things that you can rely on, right? You look back at your old notes and you say, okay, well, when the sun goes down, the tracks tend to trend this way, or, you know, different things like that. But, you know, with the technology that we have now, you know, those notes are kind of already there. We kind of already have that. You can go back and look at anything you want to look back at from past races, you know, and I think that that's where it becomes very different than it used to be. You know, the other part of it is with guys like Ty or Connor, you know, they both had to execute at a high level, right? Like they both had to come in, and I mean, they're both great race car drivers. Going to a simulator and going and getting those laps and being a part of it. I mean, those are all things that I think are really important. It's changed the game for sure. You know, I think I will be more interested. One of the things that I think from experience, that as somebody that's done it for a long time, the only thing that really helps me is like managing your week, right? When you race 1 or 5 or 8 races or something in a year, it is way different than running 32 races or 38 races like the Cup side. Or even if you get guys that come from the Truck Series, 24, 25 this year? 23. So I mean, you go from you add another 10 races. It doesn't seem like a lot, but you know, it's a significant amount of time and energy and effort. And you know, the only thing that's really probably helped those guys is honestly the schedule since COVID of being here for a less amount of days, right? When you used to be at the racetrack for the Cup Series for 4 or 5 days, like that was hard. It was hard to manage. It was hard to manage mentally as much as it was physically. And so I think if I had one area that experience really makes a difference, it's probably just in managing the weekends, you know, for the full season. But listen, there's enough talent coming through right now that I don't know that experience makes a bit of difference, to be honest with you. I think these guys are going to be really good, and it wouldn't surprise me if a guy like Connor went out and won the race tomorrow.
Obviously, in the Cup Series, there's a lot more data than in the Xfinity. You can certainly study each driver individually if you need to. But how has the influx of data taken away your advantages? You know, and how has it maybe opened your eyes to something that you weren't doing that has helped you become better in a way?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely goes both directions, right? I think you take somebody that has been successful because of a certain driving style, right? We used to always call it the Harvick line at Atlanta, right? Nobody knew what he was doing because there was no SMT, but they kind of knew the general idea, right? Well, SMT starts and everybody's able to look at that, and then, you know, you end up with 10 people running the Harvick line, right? And matching what Kevin did, and now all of a sudden it's a different story. They fixed that for us because they changed the racetrack significantly, and there is no more Harvick line. But to that point, you know, there's drivers that have their bread and butter has been finding areas that other people can't. And with SMT, especially on the Cup side, with SMT and having all of that data, if you are younger and you're coming into the sport, it's the best tool ever. I mean, I look at the 600 and what Cliff was able to coach me on just during the race, I would have never have learned that in the 3 hours that I was in the car, right? Like 3 years maybe, but not 3 hours, right? Like, I mean, it's the way that we had to adapt throughout the race. And by the end of it, obviously the pace had picked up. We were on par with where we needed to be at. And, you know, it changed the course of that day for me significantly. And, you know, you look at last week at Vegas, right? Daniel and Joey both saving fuel. Well, years past, we would have never known how much fuel got saved, right? But guess what? Now we do. Now we are able to calculate it. Now we know. And it changed the result of the race. I mean, the 20 I thought was the best car, and it ultimately doesn't win the race. So, the data has definitely changed it now. I'm not saying you got to go back because there's advantages to it, right? But I think the next generation of racer is going to have to integrate themselves into the data way more than somebody like myself or any of the Cup guys really ever had to, and it's going to change the game for sure.
Let's go to Jordan.
Like you kind of touched on it a little bit, but 2 years, I mean, when you start thinking about that second act, is that a team management role? Is it something out of the sport? Have you given it any consideration yet?
Well, I don't know if I'm done racing in 2 years. I just said 2 years was, I'm at JRM for 2 more years.
Yeah, I know that.
But to be honest with you, a lot of people don't know kind of outside the racetrack for me. I don't really talk about it a whole lot, but 2 years ago, I bought half the business from my parents back at home in Illinois, and so Homestead-Miami West, Allgaier Performance, selling racing tires, racing parts. We build race cars back at home. Spend a lot of time on the phone just because I'm not there and I'm not able to deal with it. My dad's 76, my mom's 75, and they've been in business for over 50 years. And my dad came to me about 2 years ago and said, "What does this look like?" And he's like, "Do you want me to sell it? Is this something you want to be a part of?" And I laughed and I said, I guess I assumed that you would want to keep it in the family, and I'd buy it from you, whatever. And he's like, "Well, I don't really know. You have full-time job, all of that." So my wife's the one I really feel sorry for, because I feel like she spends about 30 or 40 hours a week on the phone with my dad talking about business stuff, because she's handling a lot of it whenever I can't. But for me, I couldn't imagine anybody else's name on the door after watching my parents, go from, I remember, I mean, obviously I'm not 50, right? But I remember from when I was a kid, the stuff that we did and the terrible trucks that we used to have. I mean, I remember there was an old Freightliner cab over semi that I rode thousands and thousands of miles in with my dad, going to different racetracks or going to Hoosier to pick up tires, and there's a picture on his wall of that truck, right? And it means a lot. So for me, like that's kind of the direction that I feel like I'm headed. I've spent a lot of time with that. I don't know that I'll ever be able to walk away from the sport, right? I've been lucky enough to have a lot of great teammates come through the doors at junior sports, and really everywhere that I've gone, I've had the opportunity to help mentor some of those drivers more than others. But I really enjoy that role, and it's something that I came into the sport. I had people tell me that find the people that will help you, and take all the advice they'll give you. And I had people that fed into me in my career when I was younger, and there were others that wouldn't, but there were some that were, and I would never be here today if it wasn't for those that did. And I just feel like all of our job is to make the sport a better place when we leave it than where we found it. And so that's an option, and that's something that I would definitely be open to. But it's hard. It's hard when you're racing against people, though, right? I think sometimes everybody keeps you a little bit of an arm distance when you're helping people, when you're racing with them, because they don't ever really know how truthful you are. But for me, I've always felt like you open the book up and you tell them everything, because at the end of the day, as we've talked about already, the technology is going to surpass everything that I do. If I can help somebody and they can be better, ultimately it helps me out in the long run, and I feel good about it. Yep.
Any final questions? All right, thanks, Justin.
Thank you, guys.
All right, there's the checkered flag. Great job, driver.